We have not had a full national conversation about this man's psychological condition.
Have we not? I feel like we've been talking about it every single day.
No, we haven't. No, the press, the mainstream, we say, oh, he's nuts, he's nuts. He's literally, if you look him up in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5.
Sure.
First of all, you're ruining your own reputation. Secondly, you're betraying your profession, your professional oath. Thirdly, you are betraying your country because you're doing harm to your country, because you're creating the impression that this administration cannot be fought for all of the illegalities that we've been talking about. Right. This is an administration that is punishing people because the president is a convicted felon and is angry that he was almost brought to justice, and he wants to inflict harm on the government, and also his people wants to inflict harm on our legal system, and he also wants to deter people from fighting back to all the illegal things he's doing.
George Conway didn't own Donald Trump with a meme. He did something far worse to a man who lives for spectacle. He made the spectacle irrelevant. If you followed politics even casually, you know the broad outlines of Conway's biography. He is not some parachuting pundit who auditioned for attention once the Trump era made outrage fashionable. He clerked for a federal judge, argued in federal courts, and built a reputation as the kind of lawyer who cares a little too much about the footnotes.
Grosse Lüge is big lie. It means big lie. It was a phrase coined by Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf in 1925 for a propaganda technique by which you tell as big a lie as possible so that people will believe bigger lies. They will believe bigger lies more than they will believe smaller lies, because they simply think that it's impossible for anybody to have the temerity to tell such an amazingly large lie. But Donald Trump does that as a matter of course. He's a pathological liar and a sociopath. This is par for the course for Donald Trump, just as his lies about the supposedly stolen election in 2020 were grosse Lüge. And this is what he does, and it's why he is a cancer on American public life that must be removed once and for all. Capitulate to him. You are encouraging them to send more people to El Salvador, including potentially American citizens, because they want to create a system where everybody's too afraid to provide legal services to fight against the illegality. And one more thing here is, they're doing this because of money. Money, and here's what's going on with this. The firms that are capitulating, and I know this because I spent 30 years practicing at a law firm that did mergers and acquisitions work, okay? And it's a very lucrative form of work, and you get paid only if the deals go through. And you get paid a significant amount, a percentage of the deal. It's lucrative business, and it's fine business in ordinary times. And they're afraid that the government won't approve the deals of their clients. Well, sorry, guys, you're destroying your reputation in an environment where there aren't going to be any deals because the president is destroying the economy and the U.S. dollar. So you are doubly foolish.
He is a conservative, still is, whose criticisms of Trump never required changing his beliefs, only applying them consistently. That's why his interventions landed with such force. They were grounded in the very constitutional and rule of law principles Republicans once claimed as home turf. When Conway speaks, he does so in the unflashy argot of the law, Article 2, Appointments Clause, Separation of Powers, a language that has always been Donald Trump's second, third, or 15th choice behind bluster.
Donald Trump gets control of policing in the Capitol to the extent that he seems to desire. Think about the consequences of that, because what would have happened if he had had that kind of control on January 6th when he didn't call out the National Guard to defend the Capitol? What if he actually did have control of the Metropolitan Police and the National Guard in the way that he wants?
George, what would have happened on January 20th?
He would have remained in office because there would not have been the election of Joe Biden on January 6th. And he would have declared an emergency. And lo and behold, what do you do when you have an emergency? You call in the National Guard. He would have never left. Some people were saying that what they're doing in DC is going to be a model for other cities. But I think they're just cutting straight to the chase, because if you want to have a coup, against the constitutional order. You want to control the capital city. And if he has control of the policing in the city of Washington, there's no, how do you stop him? Who's going to tell him to leave the White House?
Okay, if you are new here, please make sure to like this video and subscribe so that we can afford more such explosive video. Back to the topic. The first time Conway truly rattled the Trump orbit wasn't with a TV hit, it was with a lawyer's instrument, the op-ed. When Trump tried to sidestep Senate confirmation and install Matthew Whitaker as acting attorney general, Conway didn't respond with adjectives. He responded with the Constitution.
This man is an adjudicated sexual abuser. Okay? Adjudicated by a jury in the Southern District of New York, found liable for something that most people, as the judge said 3 times, consider rape. The thing about Donald Trump is,
and of course, he sued ABC News when George Stephanopoulos said that, even though Stephanopoulos was quoting the judge and ABC News settled.
Yeah, Stephanopoulos didn't quite say it the right way, but the judge said it 3 times, okay? And he's right. I mean, because New York law had a particular definition of rape, and it doesn't matter. But the point of it is, there is no bottom with him. So that's why it's hard for me to say, oh, the Epstein thing is a huge scandal. It's like, no, it's of a piece. It's part and parcel of the most evil man ever to surface in American politics. He's a narcissistic sociopath. He has narcissistic personality disorder, and he has sociopath. Yeah. And what needs to be done is that needs to be talked about openly. It needs to be pointed out when he is doing things that meet those criteria, and it's got to be pointed out, and it drives him nuts when people do that. And that's the other thing, is what you can do is you can have this cycle where you drive him nuts by saying, he's crazy, he acts nuts. Then you have more video and say, look at how nuts he is. And that's what has to be done. The other thing that I would recommend to liberals is, don't get mad.
In a piece co-authored with former acting Solicitor General Neil Katyal, he argued that the move violated the Appointments Clause because an official exercising the Attorney General's power must be a principal officer, requiring Senate confirmation. Translation from legal to layman, you can't hand one of the most powerful law enforcement jobs in the country to a political loyalist who's never been confirmed for that role and call it a day. The point wasn't Whitaker's politics, it was the precedent. Do that once, and any president, this one or the next, can treat the Justice Department like an annex of his campaign headquarters.
Interesting about the Trump people is they're not loyal to each other, and not even to Trump in some ways. I don't mean the Trump voters, but I mean the people around him. They are all as self-interested as him. They are all trying to make money by acting as gatekeepers to Trump.
I guess they don't like me, but let me just tell you, these are losers from day one. Guys like Bill Kristol, he's 0-32. George Conway, you take a look at him. Just take a look at that guy. The man's a stone-cold loser. So they should not call it the Lincoln Project. It's not fair to Abraham Lincoln, a great president. They should call it the Losers Project. Okay, thanks.
Donald Trump has never, ever been right in the head.
The late, great Hannibal Lecter.
He's a wonderful man.
An enormous, really an enormous.
And then they announced there was no buys, no.
Take a look at the oranges of the investigation. Venezuela, if you have a windmill anywhere near your house, they say the noise causes cancer. I don't know what I said. All criminal. They have voter ID. They have ID on everything. You buy a loaf of bread, you have ID.
The first non-incumbent.
The kidney has a very special place in the heart. We appreciate it very much, Tim Apple. Injection inside or almost a cleaner. That an illegal act.
Learn more at psychopac.org. Anti-Psychopath PAC Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That essay was a shot across the bow. Process isn't a nuisance in a constitutional system. It's the system. Conway didn't stop there. When Trump floated ending birthright citizenship by executive order, the lawyer in him practically leapt out of the television and waved a pocket constitution. The 14th Amendment isn't a suggestion. Its text is explicit. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States.
desperation. When he feels under attack, when he's behind, he behaves in this way. But how has this struck you in that regard, in terms of what it says about his mental state?
Well, he's reaching his final destination, which is complete decompensation. None of his tricks are working anymore. We're on to them. They don't excite anybody anymore. He's losing in the polls. He has to try to make things up. And his own vice presidential candidate on another network today basically said, we're making up stories in order to win this election. And, it's not working for him, and he knows it. And he knows he's going down. And the more he feels that he's going down, remember, he's running not just for president, he's running from prison. You're going to see him engage in more and more desperate behavior. And that's what you see with I Hate Taylor Swift, is he's just lashing out. And, his people have lost control over him. And the only person who seems to have any control over him is the person who's telling him or whispering in his ear or doing something to tell him that everything's great, you're amazing, and that's Laura Loomer. And that's where this is the ultimate implosion, and we're watching it live, and it's going to get worse.
Laura.
You don't amend the Constitution with a presidential pen and a press conference. Again, the critique wasn't ideological, it was structural. If the executive branch can erase a constitutional guarantee by decree, there are no guardrails left, only guardrails of convenience. That basic insistence, do it the right way or don't do it at all, became the organizing principle of Conway's public commentary.
What we have here isn't traditional conservatism. It isn't traditional republicanism. It is authoritarianism, but I think a better word for it, as I think about it, one that more people can understand, is gangsterism, thuggism. We don't have Ronald Reagan anymore. We have Tony Soprano. He's holding people up, threatening them, bullying them, doing things that are beyond his legal power to do. And that scares people. It makes people pay protection money. We see Harvard possibly knuckling under to pay $500 million. We see these chip makers who are essentially saying, okay, take money from us. And we see the intimidation of people who have had the courage, like Miles, to speak out and criticize the president. And there is no limit to how low he will go and what he will do to intimidate and to threaten and to assert power over things. I mean, the only way you kind of get around it is he focuses on something else for a little while, and then maybe you can be left alone for a bit. And that's the problem here, is people are doing this, are fighting back or not fighting back, because they're behaving like they're in silos. The only way this stops is if people all get together, people of different stripes, people who are in industry, people who are in politics, people who are in universities, get together and say, enough. None of us are going to give in to this. And that's how this ends.
It's easy to forget now, but when Conway helped launch Checks and Balances in 2018, it was considered heresy in certain conservative circles to say out loud what so many lawyers in private were whispering: the rule of law is not a partisan commodity. The group's mission was modest and radical at once: remind the legal profession that fidelity to the Constitution sometimes means saying no to your own side.
They don't want to obey laws, they don't want to obey rules, they don't think they apply to them. And Donald Trump has no moral conscience and no empathy. He does not care about anybody else other than Donald Trump. Which is why, in his first term, he said, Article 2 lets me do whatever I want, Article 2 of the Constitution. The first Trump term, which I call Shit Show 1, was an assault on the rule of law, but it was only like it was like cancer. It was like a stage 1, maybe stage 2. We got to stage 2 right around January 6th. And he was a threat to the rule of law. And then he went into remission.
Conway's presence gave the effort credibility precisely because he declined to launder Trump's excesses into toughness or disruption. He didn't need to exaggerate, he only needed to read the cases. Then came the television phase. Conway on MSNBC, Conway on network panels, Conway with the cool detachment of a lawyer who has spent a lifetime telling clients, that's not how any of this works. If you saw one of those segments live, you remember the rhythm. The anchor would roll a clip of Trump insisting, say, that Article 2 lets him do whatever I want as president.
In terms of the things he knows he's not smart. He knows he's not stable. That's why, who says that they're a stable genius?
Stable genius.
Who says that?
Someone who isn't.
The smartest freaking people in the world I've ever met. And I've been to a bunch of different places where they're just not a smart people. You never hear them say, God, I'm a genius. Oh, I'm such a genius. Maybe amused with themselves, say, oh, that was a great idea. We've seen it before. We've seen him say and do outrageous things. And early on in his presidency, we'd see him say the most insane things. And then all of a sudden, he'd tamp it down for a few hours and read from a teleprompter. And they'd say, oh, this is the new Donald Trump. Well, there is no new Donald Trump. The Donald Trump that you see today is the same Donald Trump that people who have been watching him closely for years and who I unfortunately had to watch over the last several years. It's the same Donald Trump. He is, as Judge Kaplan, the presiding judge in this case, said, he's somebody who can't control himself. And he can't control himself because he's a deeply disturbed, a deeply morally bereft human being who has no conscience, has no morality, has no empathy, has no remorse, and is sadistic, as we saw during the trial, and as the jurors saw in the trial, right in front of their very eyes.
Conway would wait a beat, half smile like someone who's heard far wilder theories in moot court, and then walk through the law. Article 2 grants executive power. Yes, it does not grant immunity from statutes, subpoenas, or accountability. The Supreme Court, this Supreme Court, has made that clear in cases about presidential records and state prosecutions. What Trump called absolute was, in actual doctrine, anything but. It wasn't just doctrine.
An incompetent president and his competent allies screwing up an appointment of a U.S. attorney in order to bring a politically charged and baseless case. This is quintessentially Trumpian. It is mind-blowingly corrupt and unfathomably stupid.
Commercials about him abusing women into swing states. That's really great. All right, well, why don't we see one and then talk about it and then see the other?
1979, I had gotten on an airplane. The stewardess said to me, would you like to come up to first class? In the window seat was a gentleman, said that his name was Donald Trump. The airplane took off, and all of a sudden, Donald Trump started groping me. He was trying to kiss me, and I'm trying to push him away. He was basically overpowering me. When he started putting his hand up my skirt, I got out of the seat, grabbed my purse, and went back to my original seat. And I certainly was shook up by the whole thing. 2 years later, at this fundraiser, up comes Trump and his wife. And he looked at me and he said, I remember you. You're that cunt from the airplane. Donald Trump views women as for his entertainment. He is a serial predator. He has said it at point blank, and he's done it, and he will continue to do it.
Conway developed a plain-spoken indictment of Trump's fitness that cut through the personality cult because it never fixated on theatrics. In his widely read essay arguing that Trump is unfit for office, Conway described not a villain from a screed, but a pattern recognizable to any employer or judge. Compulsive lying, projection, the inability to accept responsibility, the conflation of self-interest with the public interest.
Would just absolutely destroy anybody else.
Well, speaking of getting away with things, let's see your next commercial.
My name is Natasha Stoyanov. In 2005, I went to interview Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. At one point, Melania went upstairs to change her clothes for the next photo shoot. And Trump said to me, I want to show you this beautiful painting, this beautiful room. He leads me to this room, pushes me against the wall, and starts kissing me forcefully. I tried to push him. He kept coming back at me. I was in shock and smothered, and he had his hands here against my shoulders. I felt sick inside. I felt horrified. And thank goodness the butler charges into the room. Like many women, I blamed myself. So Trump turned to me and said, you know we're going to have an affair, don't you? And Melania was approaching. I was horrified. When the Access Hollywood tape came out, and also stories of many other women, including E. Jean Carroll, I realized I was not to blame, that he was just a predator of women. What could have happened if the butler had not come into the room? Donald Trump is an adjudicated sexual assaulter. We cannot elect this man as president.
You didn't need a medical degree to recognize the pathology. You only needed eyes and a news archive. The essay landed with the weight of an affidavit. It collected, it documented, it concluded, and the conclusion was inescapable to those still willing to be persuaded by evidence. The presidency demands humility before law. Trump demanded the opposite. If there was a single live TV moment that captured why Trump loathes Conway's commentary, it was the night Conway methodically dismantled the fantasy that the Justice Department exists to shield the president from consequences.
Stage 3 is basically where we are ignoring laws and running roughshod over laws. I mean, you know, they're basically refusing to spend money appropriated by Congress, which is against the law. The law requires the president to spend money. The president can't not spend the money that's been allocated for particular subjects. And you've got this guy who's not been appointed lawfully under the Constitution.
Let's talk about that.
Musk. Yep. And so that's stage 3. Stage 4 is going to be, well, these courts are telling me not to obey orders. Why should I don't want to obey the law, so why am I obeying the courts? And stage 4 is metastasis. Stage 4 is when democracy can die, and the rule of law can die, and constitutionalism can die. And we unless something happens radically, I can't see how we don't get to stage 4, because the logical path that they are taking, which is that the law doesn't apply to us, and nobody can enforce the law against us.
The backdrop was familiar. Breaking news on a Trump legal defeat, another court rejecting an immunity-style claim, another judge reminding the world that executive power is an office, not a force field. The anchor turned to Conway for stakes. No raised voice, no performative sigh, just the clean line of law. Presidents are not kings. They serve for a term. They answer to law. In 60 seconds, Conway did what Trump's critics often fail to do.
These are the DSM-5 criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. I don't go through these. There's a Jimmy Kimmel monologue on our website and our website that goes through these, and it's pretty funny. That's the reason why he spoke for several hours last night. It's because, he's full of himself. But here's the real issue. He is also a sociopath. Okay? And what's a sociopath? This is the DSM definition. A pervasive pattern of disregard and violation of the rights of others, and you have to have 3 or more of the following. This isn't hard. You don't have to be a shrink. Failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors. He's a convicted felon. Deceitfulness. How many lies did he tell last night? 30,000 lies on during his administration. Impulsivity. Hey, let's talk about Hannibal Lecter. Let's buy Greenland. Impulsivity. Irritability and aggressiveness, and including assaults. He raped a woman. He's found by a jury to rape a woman. He sexually assaulted many others. Reckless disregard for the safety of the others. Let's say, the January 6th, let the guys through with the magnetometers with the guns. And I can go right all the way through it. He's 9 for 9. Well, he's a sick man. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing. And I think he's had an advantage over these last couple of years that people have been seeing him. And that now that they're going to see him, they're going to see the guy's a nut job. And we got to get rid of this double standard, and we have to start talking about this, and that's the point of psychopact.org.
He didn't psychoanalyze, he normalized the law. When the segment ended, the clip ricocheted across social media, not because it was spicy, but because it was clarifying. If you have spent years trapped in the fog of grievance, clarity can feel like destruction. Trump noticed. Trump always notices. He blasted Conway on social media with the same middle school energy he has poured into everyone who tells him the rules apply. He called him names, swiped at his personal life, tried to degrade him by proximity to the powerful woman in his household. It backfired.
You don't want to diagnose him, but I think if you look at the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, he fits every single one of them. It's like the criteria were made to describe him. And I think what we saw with this tweet yesterday is that last final collapse of Donald Trump's mental state. I mean, you think about it, those were like 50, 60, 70,000 people in the aggregate in five rallies in different states. That's loopier than saying that the moon landings were staged, because there were tens of thousands of people were there. To think that is crazy, and to try to sell it to people is just as crazy. He's a sociopath, and it's one of the things about sociopaths is that they don't plan, they don't think, they just emote, and they're impulsive, and they act on their whims and impulses, and the last person who talked to them. And that's why you have, and then also they have the power, they love the power, the feeling of power that they get when they say, I'm turning this on, I'm turning this off, I'm turning the lights out, I'm turning the lights on, I'm raising tariffs, I'm lowering tariffs, I'm telling everybody in Tehran, 10 million people to evacuate. I'm telling them they're safe for now. Okay? He gets off on that. And then he gets bored with what he said yesterday. And of course, he doesn't necessarily remember what he says or care what he says yesterday. So tomorrow's going to be something else.
You can't insult your way past a legal analysis, and you can't bully the Constitution. Every time Trump lashed back, Conway's point deepened. This is not how serious leaders act under serious scrutiny. If a president responds to oversight with tantrums and threats, you don't need to be a liberal to worry. You need to be a citizen. Conway's impact was magnified by the cases that followed Trump out of office. You've watched them play out: criminal indictments alleging mishandling of classified documents, prosecutions tied to efforts to overturn an election, civil trials producing devastating liability findings, including juries that concluded Trump defamed and sexually abused E. Jean Carroll.
Absolutely, I do think that. I think it was most propitious timing. I think this needed to be done no matter who the Democratic nominee was, for the simple reason that Donald Trump has been getting basically this easy pass, double standard on his behavior, because we've seen so much of it, and it's basically been normalized, even though it's completely bizarre. We almost kind of don't bat an eyelash at him talking about sharks and electrocution and Hannibal Lecter. I mean, he's been doing crazy stuff like that for years. So he has this weird advantage, and that's part of the advantage. The other part of the advantage is that people are afraid to talk about mental health issues of any sort, lest they give offense or they don't want to stigmatize people. But I mean, this is just so different. I mean, this is the man, the question, this is the question of the mental stability of somebody who would have control of the second largest nuclear arsenal on the planet. I mean, this is just, you just can't look at it the same way.
A sprawling financial fraud case in New York that bore the antiseptic label civil, but resulted in 9-figure penalties and business restrictions. Conway didn't gloat. He explained. He explained why the standard of proof differs in civil versus criminal cases. He explained why juries matter, why appellate courts matter, why saying witch hunt is not a legal defense. He told viewers what every lawyer tells every client in trouble: the courtroom is the last place you want to play a character.
I think the Republican Party may be in its death throes, and if Donald Trump loses. And here's the reason. They fired everybody at the RNC and made them reapply for their jobs. He moved the RNC down to Florida. He put his daughter-in-law in charge of it, and he merged it with his campaign. Now, what happens to political campaigns after the candidate loses? Poof. They disappear into thin air, like they never existed. That's what could happen to the RNC, because it basically has become a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump campaign. Now let's look at the state level. There are literally these political bloodbaths going on in Michigan, Arizona, where you have the semi-normal MAGAs who are run-of-the-mill, spineless, craven Republicans who support Trump because that's their meal ticket, and would support someone else if somebody else were in charge. And then the Carrie Lakes and Laura Loomer types and the MTG types, okay, who basically want to burn everything down, and they don't care. They don't actually care about winning elections. It's all this sort of performative nonsense, and I don't know if there's a viable Republican Party or a viable Republican establishment after this is all over.
What's wild is that I have worked on lots and lots of campaigns, and Chris Lesavita is not a dumb man.
No.
Susie Weil built the Republican Party of Florida into a very, very very, very formidable institution. And they did it because they understood the mechanics of winning elections. They understood the importance of, as you say, a strong party independent of a campaign, because that party over time gets better and better and better from candidate to candidate to candidate.
Right.
And I don't know if they are just like not empowered, but like I don't understand why they are allowing Donald Trump to continue to badmouth vote by mail, to say I don't care if people vote, to do those things.
Because they can't. As I said, you can manipulate him for little bits of time, but you can't control him.
If you're still watching, I know which side you're on. All right, your turn. Sound off below, and let's keep this conversation anchored where it belongs. In facts you can verify, in documents you can read, and in a shared commitment to the one thing that ultimately destroyed the strong man in every story worth telling: the truth.